Kazu was a nerdy wimp who secretly had a crush on his favorite author. However, everything changes when he wakes up as a dog and gets adopted by his crush, but she turns out to be a lunatic who likes to tie him up and give him freaky commands. It all begins one day when Kazu visits a cafe to read the latest work of his favorite author, but suddenly notices his wallet is missing. Just then, a robber pulls a rifle on the cafe attendant and fires at the wall to show him it's not a toy. He notices Kazu and tells him to get up, so he quickly obeys. However, he notices a girl sitting near him, scribbling away as though she has extra lives in reserve. This annoys the robber, so he approaches her to stop her from aura farming on him. But Kazu suddenly attacks the robber and wrestles to disarm him. Unfortunately, he didn't inherit fight genes from his ancestors, so he falls, and the thief blows his brains out. As Kazu passes out, he watches the lost cause he died for, still writing without flinching. After a weird afterlife experience, Kazuhito finds himself in a cage and feels grateful to be alive, until an afro-haired guy shows up and calls him a dog. Just then, he sees himself in a mirror and wonders what in the sweet, fiery purgatory is going on. After accepting his new reality, Kazu gets bored, since he has no books to read. Just then, the afro guy walks in with a book, making Kazu excited, but when the guy sees him jumping, he serves him some food, thinking he's hungry. This drives Kazu into despair, and the only thing he can think to do is call out his favorite author's name. Suddenly, a cute girl named Hime shows up and asks the afro guy how much Kazu costs. However, when the guy says he's not for sale, she breaks him out of his cage and takes him. After this, Hime ties Kazu up, and while he struggles to break free, she threatens to cut him open with her scissors. When Kazu starts barking, Hime complains of the noises, so Kazu thinks of how to talk instead of making sounds. When Hime says he can do it if he tries, Kazu wonders how she heard him when he didn't even bark. Just then, Hime says she can hear his thoughts, making Kazu freak out as he asks how that's possible. In response, Hime says that his ramblings have been ringing in her head for days, so she followed his voice and ended up at the pet shop. When Kazu asks who she is, Hime introduces herself as Everyman's Spec, but Kazu checks her out and realizes her chest needs some important upgrades. On reading his thoughts, Hime threatens to unalive him, so Kazu wonders why he's so unfortunate to have ended up with a psychopath armed with scissors after the robbery. Curious, Hime asks why he's thinking of robbery, and Kazu suddenly remembers she was the girl at the cafe. He then narrates his situation to her, thinking she won't believe him, but Hime leaves to take a shower and returns looking like a cookie hawker. When she asks Kazu if he likes what he sees, he explains that he only gets off by shoving his thingy between book pages. Feeling judged, he points out that her chest is proof that less can be more, so Hime cuts him down, making him crash into the ground. She then suggests that he stay with her, while Kazu wonders if he'll soon be a part of a recipe. Later, when Hime shows him her library, he gets excited and is impressed to see she has books written by Shinobu, his favorite author. Just then, Hime asks why he was calling her name at the pet store, but Kazu denies this. So she reveals that she's Shinobu, while explaining that it's her pen name. So Kazu freaks out. Some days later, Kazu hears that his murderer, Toji, is at large and has been declared wanted. But when Hime sees him saddened by the news, she makes some calls, and the next day, she tells him they're going out to settle a score. The next morning, Kiri heads out with Kazu, and as he walks with her, he looks up her skirt and gets a view of her rice cakes, so he looks away. Kiri then asks why he's pretending to be a decent dog, and Kazu responds that he's only turned on by text. Shortly after, they run into the afro guy, who then greets Kazu but starts fidgeting when he locks eyes with Hime. When she states that she hates his hair, the guy suddenly gets on his knees. When they leave, they pass by Maxi, a model trying too hard to blow up, but Hime ignores her and keeps walking. Annoyed by this, Maxi tries to challenge Hime, but luckily for her, her bodyguard grabs her like an accessory and walks away. Afterwards, Kazu asks Hime if she knows her, but Hime pretends she didn't realize anyone was there. A few moments later, they arrive at Sumiya Hall, where Kazu used to live, and when Hime says they're there to even the score, Kazu asks what score she's talking about. Ignoring his question, Hime says his room number is 102, but Kazu clarifies that he actually stays in room 101. He further explains that the house belongs to a distant relative, so he was allowed to live there for free and look after the house. So he moved into room 101 and used 102 as a library. Despite this, Hime says they're headed to room 102, so Kazu points out that they don't have a key. When Hime takes out the key, Kazu asks how she got it, and Hime says she got it from a cop who's also her sister. On entering the room, Kazu realizes his parents took his things but left the books for later, and finds a newspaper from the previous day. When he wonders how it got there, Hime narrates that the man who shot him fled, and he's still hiding somewhere. He had taken Kazu's wallet from the crime scene, and since he had nowhere to go, he headed to Kazu's apartment. On getting there, he finds out that the key belonged to room 101. After this, Hime explains that the police and Kazu's relatives must have visited room 102 only, since nobody was documented to have been living in room 101. While Kazu marvels at this, they hear a noise from the next room, and when they step out, they spot Toji heading out. Immediately he sees them. Toji bolts, and they chase him. Shortly after, Toji stops on a bridge and faces Hime to identify her as the girl at the cafe, but Kazu senses a difference in him. When she responds, telling him to give himself up, Toji says he can't be caught yet and attacks her. After evading a few punches, Hime takes a hit and falls. Just when she realizes he has a copy of one of her books, Toji takes out another book and says he can't be caught yet until he reads the last of the books. Hearing this, Kazu figures he must have changed after reading the books. Suddenly, Hime charges towards him, and as she attacks, Kazu notices Toji fighting with the Nameless Fist, a fighting style from one of Kazu's books. On noticing this too, Kazu steps back and says she must have written too much, and adds that she might have commended him under different circumstances. Suddenly, Toji switches to using the Hound's Step, another technique to confuse the enemy from Kazu's book. While Kazu witnesses the moment where a reader exceeds the author, Toji knocks Hime down using one of her books. However, Hime lands on her feet, surprising Toji as the books start dropping from his pockets. Just then, Kazu realizes that Hime took the hit to get close to Toji and cut open his pockets with her scissors. Agitated by this, asks Hime to give the books back, but as he tries to attack, she disarms him and cuts his other pockets, making the other books drop. When Hime asks if he has more books stuffed where the sun never shines, Toji suddenly charges towards her. Unfortunately, she sends him flying with a kick, and he lands unconscious on the bridge railing. Worried, Kazu asks Hime if she's alright, but she tells him that he could easily push Toji off the bridge and get away with it. However, when Kazu hesitates, she says he has the right to take his revenge. So, Kazu pulls Toji off the bridge railing and says he's a lover of books, and when Hime reminds him that Toji murdered him, Kazu says it's pointless, since getting his revenge won't turn him back into a human. Annoyed by this, Hime insists on getting the revenge for him, since he died trying to save her. Just then, while Hime starts blaming herself for his death, Kazu jumps on her and says she would have done the same if she were in his shoes. However, when Hime says he knows nothing about her, Kazu says he's learned enough about her from her books since he's been reading them like his life depends on it. Suddenly, Hime tears up, so Kazu tells her to stop crying, but she starts wailing then. On their way home, Kazu asks Hime if she's okay, and she suddenly takes out her scissors. She then asks if she'll understand his feelings if she cuts his chest open. On hearing this, Kazu freaks out and asks if she wants to punish him. In response, Hime says she's more likely to torment him if she likes him. After this, Hime says she suddenly feels like she can continue writing her book now, and this reminds Kazu that they left Sumiya Hall unlocked. So he heads back, but when Hime asks what he's doing, Kazu says the books are practically his little darlings, and he can't allow them to get stolen. Hime then pretends to be dumb and says they can't be talking about babies, since she can't have a dog as her first. While Hime thinks about how his puny size might not get the job done, Kazu comments on her invisible chest handles. On hearing this, Hime fires up and chases him off. Sometime later, Kazu dreams about his sister, Madoka, trying to wake him for school, but since he doesn't respond, she threatens to start burning his books in alphabetical order. Suddenly, Kazu jumps up and asks if she's gone insane. This annoys Madoka, so she reminds him that he told her to say that if he doesn't respond. Suddenly, Hime appears out of nowhere and accuses him of flirting with another lady after they've talked about building a family. Suddenly, she whips out her long scissors to punish him, but he wakes up sweating and panting from the nightmare. He then wonders why he's dreaming about the monster and wonders how Madoka is doing. Shortly after, he moves around the apartment and finds Suzu sleeping at the table, so he moves closer and notices her moving strangely. Suddenly, she gets up like a zombie making its debut, and starts a monologue that reminds Kazu of his walking nightmare. When she hops on the table and starts acting like a lunatic, Hime shows up and apologizes for keeping her waiting. Immediately, Suzu resets and calls Hime her teacher, leaving Kazu confused, so Hime passes a card bearing Suzu's name to him. Just then, he realizes she's Hime's editor and gets starstruck. Just then, Suzu mentions that Hime's low on writing energy and suggests that she go on a trip or try something new. However, when Hime says it's too much work, Suzu suggests she invest in her front end to prevent people from mistaking her for a man. Hearing this, Kazu expects Suzu's head to roll, but he watches her flaunt her milk factories while saying she'd share some with Hime if she could. Having had enough, Hime draws her scissors and cuts Suzu's shirt, but the idiot gets excited and thanks her for it. When she comments on how much she loves the cut, Hime says that only she and Kazu enjoy being cut. Just then, Suzu berates Hime for getting a dog without telling her and says she's okay being Hime's only dog. At this point, Kazu realizes their guest gets off being tortured, and when Suzu tells Hime to take her time and start writing again, Kazu recalls the moment Hime knocks out Toji and says she feels like she can resume writing. However, after writing for a while, she stops again. So Kazu guesses she writes better when there are incidents. Shortly after, when Suzu heads out, she points out that there's been rumors about a slasher in the area and tells Hime to be careful, while Kazu thinks the slasher needs to be wary of her. Afterwards, Kazu asks Hime how long she's been on downtime, and when she tells him, Kazu realizes it started right after he got popped by Toji. Suddenly, Hime draws her scissors and insinuates that he must be the cause, since she adopted him around the same time. Some days later, Suzu visits and asks if Hime is back to writing, but when Hime says she's still not in the mood, Suzu suggests she read a magazine and takes out one containing an article about the slasher she mentioned. When Suzu says that a young girl and a salaryman have been attacked, Hime suggests that she act as bait and lure out the slasher, while promising to reward her with whips and scissors. Fired up, Suzu promises not to let anyone else become a victim and takes her leave. After this, Hime asks Kazu if he's worried about Suzu, and when he confirms that he is, Hime says she'll ask her sister about it. Later, Hime and Kazu head out, and when she announces that they're going to look for the slasher by themselves, Kazu asks if she talked to her sister. However, Hime says that his sister refused to tell her anything and suggests they begin their investigation. Afterwards, they arrive at a bookstore to ask some girls questions about the slasher, and Sakura, the shop owner's daughter, reveals that although it's just a rumor, there was a girl who chased off the suspect with a book written by Hime. While they talk, the store owner chips in that one of the other victims of the slasher was attacked after buying the same book from their store. Meanwhile, Sakura's sister, Yaoi, tickles Kazu in all the right spots. Shortly after, Kazu leaves the store with a shaved tail and asks Hime what he did to deserve that. In response, Hime calls him a creep for flirting with the young girl at the store. And while she threatens to deal with him later, a dude hurrying to work slips suddenly and falls near them. On realizing he's a salaryman, Hime questions him, and he reveals that the victim is his colleague. In addition to this, the guy states that his colleague was assaulted on his way home after reading one of Hime's books at a cafe. After they leave, they run into Maxie hustling by the roadside again, and Hime ignores her as usual. But this time, she orders her men to block the road, and she uses them as a makeshift stage to perform. Suddenly, Kazu realizes she's also a writer and idol whose work is popular among young readers. Kazu then asks Hime what Maxie is up to, and she explains that she's been following her for a while. When Hime says she has no idea how Maxie found out her true identity, Maxie says she was curious to see how brilliantly an author compared to her will shine. Just then, Hime ignores her again and walks away, saying she doesn't have time for her. Maxie then says that Hime is running away because she's scared of her, and when she makes a weird pose, Hime asks what she's up to. In response, Maxie says she's flaunting her Peaky Blinders, annoying Hime in the process, so she draws her scissors and threatens to make her bald. On hearing this, Maxie jumps down and also threatens to reduce what's left of her mini saucers. However, Maxie's guard grabs her and says it's time to leave, making her scream as he takes her away. Hime, on the other hand, sits with Kazu to brainstorm on how her books are connected to the slasher incidents. When Kazu insinuates that Hime is the culprit, since she wears dark clothes and carries a pair of scissors, Hime threatens to cut him up. Suddenly, they spot a crowd nearby, and when they head over there, they realize the Afro guy was attacked by the slasher but only lost part of his hair. On looking around, Hime spots a masked person and starts chasing her, while Kazu looks around for any of Hime's books at the scene. Just then, he arrives at an alley and finds one of her books. Excited, he decides to read till Hime gets back, but he suddenly walks into a trap. Later, Kazu awakens and freaks out when he finds himself tied up at Sumiya Hall. Just then, Madoka shows up, surprising him. Meanwhile, Hime continues her chase, but loses the culprit at a crossroads. Just when she admits she's slow, she spots one of her books, which must have been dropped by the suspect. Back at Sumiya Hall, Madoka calls Kazu her brother, and Kazu wonders how she could tell it's him. So he wonders if she can hear him, and Madoka confirms that she can. On hearing this, Kazu gets excited that someone else could hear him apart from Hime. He then asks what she's doing there, and if she set the trap that caught him. So, Madoka explains that she was sure she would find him and asks if he's happy. In response, Hime says that although his life has been ruled by violence, he's happy. After this, Kazuha asks about their parents, but Madoka keeps avoiding the question and saying she has everything he needs. However, Kazu asks her for their family cat's name to be sure she really is his sister, but Madoka evades the question, making Kazu wonder if she's an imposter. Suddenly, Madoka tears up and says she wanted him to move with them, but she cheers up and tells Kazu that they'll be together forever. When she starts throwing a tantrum, Kazu wonders why she's acting strangely. Suddenly, Madoka says she has already prepared dinner, so she leaves and returns with a bowl of chili peppers. While Kazu wonders if she's trying to end him, Madoka tries to spoon-feed him, but he refuses to eat it. So she suddenly stops and says she forgot to garnish the food, and when she leaves to do that, Kazu tries to break free and escape. Just then, he notices Hime staring intently at him through the window. After this, Hime takes him somewhere else and hangs him on a rope to interrogate him. When she asks who he was flirting with at Sumiya Hall, Kazu asks if she's talking about Madoka. Hime then responds by calling Madoka a pet thief and threatening to punish her for stealing. However, when Kazu tells her to stop calling his sister names, she cuts the ropes and asks Kazu to tell her everything about Madoka. When Hime finally believes him, she points out that Madoka is her sister-in-law, while Kazu asks where she's been. In response, Hime reveals that she was pursuing someone suspicious. After this, Kazu asks Hime if she got the culprit, and when she says she didn't, Kazu says she's useless. So she takes out the book the culprit dropped, and Kazu wonders if the culprit might be someone who bears a grudge against her. However, after thinking, Hime asks Kazu what Madoka is doing in the city. In response, Kazu asks if she's insinuating that Madoka is the culprit, but Hime says she has to pay for kidnapping her dog. On hearing this, Kazu points out that Madoka didn't hurt anyone, but Hime says her heart was hurt, but Kazu dismisses this, saying she's probably just hungry, so Hime draws her scissors to terrorize him more. The next day, Hime and Kazu check Sumiya Hall for Madoka, but since she's nowhere to be found, they resume their slasher case investigation. On their way, they run into Suzu, who then says she heard on the news that the slasher struck again. In response, Hime reminds her of her promise to prevent that from happening and berates her for failing, while Hime calls her many degrading names. Kazu chips in too, but Suzu says she can't believe they're ganging up on her and suddenly lights up. Ignoring this, Hime asks if she gathered any information at least, so Suzu claims that Hime's books are related to the incident. Unimpressed, Hime says she's aware of that and asks if she has better information. But Suzu happily goes on her knee and asks Hime to violate her with a pipe. Immediately, Suzu zooms off but pauses to ask Hime if she knows about a girl who was cutting up one of her books at the park while muttering her pen name. Moments later, they visit the park and find scraps of the books on the floor, and Madoka suddenly appears, excited to find Kazu. She then asks him who Hime is, but when Hime identifies her as Kazu's sister, Madoka says that only Kazu can call her his sister. Just as both ladies get confrontational, Kazu gets in between them and tries to stop them. However, Hime prepares to draw her scissors and says that the fastest way to solve the slasher case is by asking her. At this point, Kazu begs her to cut him instead. So Hime asks Madoka about the shreds of the book they found at the park, and she reveals that she burned all of Kazu's books written by Hime. Suddenly, Hime drops a smoke bomb and vanishes with Kazu, while Madoka calls out for him. Later at Hime's apartment, Kazu asks if Madoka is responsible for the slasher incidents, but Hime says she's not sure. While Kazu wonders about Madoka's motive, Hime says she might be angry because Shinobu took her brother away from her. Furthermore, Hime explains that Madoka might be pissed because her brother chose to stay in Tokyo because of his love for Shinobu's books. Just then, Kazu realizes that he has accepted his death, but didn't think of how it might affect his family. While Hime points out that Madoka must think she can bring back her brother by destroying those who unalived him, Kazu says he still believes in his sister. However, he adds that if the slasher turns out to be Madoka, he'll stop her and asks Hime to lend him her strength. Hime then tells him to stop, making her feel like the villain, but Kazu assures her that she's good, surprising Hime, who then reminds him of how she's been torturing him. Despite this, Kazu says he'll never forget who she really is and adds that he can rely on her because he trusts her strength. Hime then agrees to help him and promises to go easy on Madoka. Suddenly, Madoka breaks in through the window and grabs Kazu while saying she has finally found him. While Kazu marvels at Madoka's entrance, Madoka says it's a good thing that she predicted his disappearance and put a tracking device on him. While Kazu panics about this, Hime asks Madoka if she broke in, knowing the room belongs to Shinobu. On hearing this, Madoka figures she must be Shinobu, so she accuses Hime of stealing Kazu from her and driving him crazy. When she suddenly gets emotional and says she wanted to spend more time with Kazu, Hime states that Kazu is gone and tells her to face reality. After this, she tells Madoka that her actions won't make Kazu happy, but Madoka shuts her up, saying she knows nothing about her brother. Just then, Hime asks Madoka how much she really knows about Kazu and adds that she believes in him since he reads her work. She then reveals that Kazu died protecting her and adds that, since she watched him die, she'll keep writing for him. After this, she asks Madoka if she thinks Kazu would condemn her actions, so Madoka feels guilty and jumps out the window with Kazu. Some moments later, Kazu wakes up and finds Madoka feeling sober. Just then, Madoka says there's no way he's her brother and narrates how she showed up in the town to look for him and ended up setting a trap. After Kazu fell for the trap, she thought it must be him, since he's the only idiot who would fall for a trap baited with a book. While she keeps beating herself up, Kazu tries to cheer her up. So Madoka says she'll never be able to face Kazu if she keeps running. So she welcomes Hime and says she's surprised she found them. In response, Hime reveals that she also has a tracker on Kazu, so Madoka unboxes her knife and threatens to chop Hime to pieces. Hearing this, Kazu freaks out while Madoka prepares to annihilate Hime. However, Hime draws her scissors too and threatens to shred Madoka into pieces. Suddenly, Hime charges towards Madoka, who then swings her huge knife, but Hime evades the attack. After they clash explosively, Kazu trembles while watching the duel. Immediately, Madoka transforms her knife into a chainsaw and charges towards Hime, who then easily evades her attacks while Madoka destroys half the trees in the forest. Unimpressed, Hime comments that Madoka's weapon would be perfect for mowing a lawn, annoying Madoka, so she threatens to spill Hime's guts. Suddenly, she charges towards Hime, but as she attacks, Hime jumps over her and chops off parts of her weapon. Seeing this, Madoka realizes that her effort is pointless, since Kazu is gone, but she refuses to give up to prove to herself that she's a good sister. So she converts her weapon into a cannon and aims at Hime, surprising Kazu. Suddenly, she fires at Hime, who then blocks and shatters the bullet with her scissors. Seeing this, Madoka feels defeated and collapses. Shortly after, while they head home, Hime and Madoka start vibing as if nothing happened. While Kazu marvels at this, Hime asks Madoka why she destroyed the books, and she reveals that she did it because Kazu once told her that selling her books to used bookstores makes the author lose profit and told her to either shred or burn them instead. Surprised, Hime asks if it has nothing to do with the slasher incident, but Madoka has no idea what that means, so she explains that all she did was cut up the book and abduct Kazu. When Hime asks if she cut the Afro guy's hair or attacked anyone in the shopping district, Madoka denies this and says she has no ill thoughts towards people. Later that day, Kazu stands outside the house and suddenly tells Suzu to step out of hiding. When he says he knows she can hear him, Suzu asks how long he has known. And in response, Kazu says he's known since the day she accused him and Hime of ganging up against her. After this, Suzu asks Kazu if Hime knows, but he says he's unsure, so Suzu asks how much he knows. Just then, Kazu reveals that all the information they gathered was from stories she planted and accuses her of setting the whole thing up. Upon hearing this, Suzu admits that she did it all to get Hime out of her downtime while adding that she'll do whatever it takes to get Hime back to writing. However, Kazu tells her to quit fooling around, since Hime can get out of the downtime by herself. After stating that he believes in Hime, he tells Suzu to also believe in her. But Suzu says that an author who doesn't write is not an author and promises to do everything to help Hime. Suddenly, Kazu retorts, telling her that Hime doesn't need her help. Just then, Suzu points out that he's gotten too close to Hime since she's never seen her get emotional because of anyone. Afterwards, Suzu wonders what kind of book Hime would write if Kazu dies and throws some darts near him and reiterates that she'd do anything to get Hime writing again. When Suzu turns to take her leave, Kazu stops her and says that he'll not accept her way of doing things. He then declares her an enemy, but she ignores him and tries to leave. Just then, Hime shows up, surprising Suzu, as she confirms that she's also been suspecting Suzu all along. Just then, Suzu gets on her knees and begs Hime, who then says she's already out of the downtime, so she takes the scripts of her new writing and flings them in the air while telling Suzu to catch every sheet while on her knees. After this, Hime tells Kazu that she was able to write the previous night after punishing him. When Suzu finished catching the scripts, she got so excited, so Hime stepped on her while reminding her to stay out of her way, since she could overcome anything just to write. In her defense, Suzu claims she did it for Hime, who then threatens to stop abusing her if she can't do as she's told. Scared by this, Suzu apologizes. The next day, at the station, Hime tells Madoka that she can always come back to visit Kazu. While Madoka gets excited, Hime says she's always happy to lend a hand when her readers need help, so Madoka thanks her. After Madoka leaves, Hime asks Kazu if he's sad, but Kazu says he's just curious about what's going on with the slasher case. Suddenly, Suzu pops out of nowhere and says she ran into the real slasher while spreading her rumors, beat him up. Hearing this, Kazu asks if she means they've been wasting time on the investigation since, and Suzu confirms that they have. She then senses Hime's anger and quickly lies on the floor, begging to be punished. Sometime later, Kazu heads to the bookstore to shop for books, and while Sakura leaves to get the books on his list, Kazu panics, hoping Yaoi doesn't come in anytime soon. Finally, Sakura packs his books in his pouch, and just as he's about to leave, Yaoi enters the store. As usual, she grabs Kazu and tickles him till he's exhausted and smoking. After this, she waves him goodbye and says they'll meet some other time. However, she then reveals that she might be leaving the town soon and grabs Kazu for another round. On returning to the apartment, Kazu tells Hime about his run-in with Yayoi, but Hime accuses him of cheating on her by allowing another woman to touch him. Suddenly, Hime draws out her scissors and threatens to castrate him with them if he ever makes a move on the girl. Kazu then angrily tells her to stop treating him like he's cultured. Afterwards, when Kazu points out that Yayoi will be leaving town soon, Hime says she's probably trying to run away. On hearing this, Kazu laments, saying he won't be able to get books anymore. But Hime tells him he could get the book elsewhere or order it through the mail. However, Kazu explains that he and the bookstore share a heart-wrenching history. Hime then says she's uninterested in his sob story and suggests she read a book instead. Ignoring this, Kazu starts his story, but Hime gets annoyed and almost impales him with her scissors. Afterwards, she decides to hear him out, so Kazu reveals that last spring, when he just started school, he needed to meet the manager of Sumiya Hall at the station, but he arrived an hour early. So he looked around for books and found some juicy-looking ones at a store. On entering the store, he found an old fag complaining about one of Shinobu's books. Immediately, he steps up to defend his idol and blames the woman for not reading the book to the end. He then begins a lecture on reading large books like that, and by the time he's done, Sakura tells him the old woman left hours ago. Annoyed, Kazu banged the table, and since Sakura's dad thought it was his daughter being cracked, he charged at Kazu with a baseball bat. Luckily, he escaped, and Sakura called her dad to order. So he apologized and told Kazu to take a free copy of any book he wanted. Excited, Kazu quickly scanned through the shelves and found a rare book, and when the man congratulated him, he complimented his taste. On hearing this, the store owner told him to take as many books as he wanted while offering him a point card. Meanwhile, Sakura warned her dad that he would get in trouble with her mom. Just then, Kazu checked the time and realized that he was 2 hours later, so he rushed out and met the manager, who then crashed out. After ending his story, Kazu says his point card records all the books he got and read from the store. Right then, Kazu realizes that Hime has been sleeping off, so he starts making creepy jokes about her tiny chest pointers. Unknown to him, Hime woke up and drew her scissors, so she gave him an ugly cut. After this, Kazu decides to look into what's going on at his favorite bookstore. The next day, when he visits the store, he finds Yayoi screaming at Sakura, and as she runs out, she grabs Kazu and takes him to a nearby park. There, she reveals that Sakura doesn't care if the store closes, and since they'll be separated, Yayoi says she doesn't want that to happen. After this, Yayoi says she came up with some ideas to save the store, but Sakura didn't listen to her. However, she states that she decided to carry out her plan alone and takes out a flagged cap branded with the store's name. Just then, she states that they'll walk around the town wearing the cap to increase their patronage. While Kazu silently applauds her for this, Yayoi puts the cap on him, making him freak out. Shortly after, they start walking around town, and while Yayoi calls for people to visit the store, Kazu wishes the ground would swallow him up. Suddenly, some girls comment on how cute Kazu looks, so Yayoi tells them he loves to be petted in his fluffy place. While the girls rub his danger zone, Kazu freaks out, hoping nobody he knows sees him, but unfortunately for him, Hime is home fuming after seeing pictures of him on social media. Somewhere in town, Yayoi and Kazu run into Maxi, and when Yayoi gets starstruck, Maxi hands her a pair of glasses. Just then, she notices the flag on Kazu's head and announces that she'll make the store the most famous in the country. But Yayoi suddenly takes off the glasses and runs off, saying she loves her dad's store. Afterwards, Yayoi sits in a park and starts crying, so Kazu tries to get her attention but can't. While he thinks of getting Sakura, Hime's scissors suddenly land near him as she shows up, accusing him of cheating on her and making Yayoi cry. Immediately, Hime grabs him and asks him how he'd like to be cut, scaring Kazu, who then asks how she found him. Kazu then reminds him that she has a tracker on him and can find him anywhere in the world. Facing Yayoi, Hime tells her to go home, since it's late, but when Yayoi says she doesn't want to go home, Hime tells her to wait till she's an adult to say that. Yayoi then reveals that she doesn't want to go because she told her sister she hates her, but Hime says she also has an annoying elder sister, whom she calls names. She then advises Yayoi to apologize and offers to sacrifice Kazu to appease her sister. Moments later, they all arrive at the store, where Sakura questions Yayoi on where she's been. In response, Yayoi apologizes, and the sisters square things up. When they hug, Yayoi's advert cap falls, and when Sakura sees it, she apologizes to Yayoi and thanks Hime. Just then, Sakura offers to thank them for their help, so Hime asks Sakura to tell her about the store while explaining that one of her friends is a die-hard fan of the store. When she asks if the store is really closing down, Sakura says it's not, even though her father sucks at business. Curious, she asks where they heard that from, and Yayoi reveals that she saw her parents fighting and thought they were about to separate. In addition, she points out that Sakura told her that the store might close. On hearing this, Sakura explains that their parents weren't really fighting, and suddenly, her dad gets thrown out of a room. Just then, Yayoi points out that their mom is beating up their dad again, but Sakura says it's their love language. She then reassures Yayoi that they aren't separating. On their way home, Hime takes out her scissors and threatens to punish Kazu, but he runs away, saying he doesn't want to go home. The next day, while Kazu reads a book, Hime shows up and says she wonders why he's reading a book written for promising young people in law. Kazu then responds, saying he has a right to read whatever he wants. Just then, she says she needs him to help her look for something, but Kazu says he's busy. Hime then calls him an arrogant freeloader, and when she threatens to make him rest in peace, Kazu asks what she needs. She then tells him to find her Victoria's secret, but Kazu says he's surprised she wears any, since she reminds him of a ruler. Annoyed by this, Hime takes out her frustration on him and suggests he start looking for it. However, Kazu says he's not good at finding lost things, but she tells him to put his nose to good use. Suddenly, Kazu leaps at Hime, but she slaps him into the wall and asks if he's gone nuts. He then says he needs her scent, so Hime holds him close while he sniffs her up. However, when he starts feeling her up too, Hime flings him into the wall again and calls him a creep. When she adds that there's an order to follow before he starts sampling her goodies. Annoyed, Kazu says he couldn't locate the mustard seeds she's crying about. Suddenly, Hime draws her scissors, making him scream. Some hours later, Suzu enters the apartment and finds Leizu tied up, so she asks why, and Kazu tells her to untie him if he wants to know. Suddenly, Hime walks in and cuts Kazu down. She then asks Suzu why she showed up, and Suzu says she came because Hime called her. Just then, Hime tells her to go back to her office and return, making Kazu wonder why she's being punished, but Suzu says it's a reward for her. Afterwards, they look around for Hime's wear, but she suddenly spots Kazu reading a book and picks it up while commenting that he's got some nerves. Just then, Kazu accuses her of committing one of the 7 crimes against books, surprising Hime, who then asks about the 6 other sins. While Hime lists her crimes, Hime throws her scissors at him, but he evades them and hits a shelf nearby. Kazu then asks if she was trying to end him, and Hime says he almost bored her to death with his ramblings. Suddenly, a box on the shelf falls on Kazu, while Hime tries to catch it. Unfortunately, the box opens, and Kazu finds a melon-enlarging kit in it, while Hime suddenly gets red. Kazu then commends her for trying despite her hopeless situation, but this annoys Hime, so she grabs Kazu and draws her scissors while asking if he has any final words. Moments later, they head to the gym to look for her missing chest huggers, but Suzu comments that she must have forgotten to take them home since she won't notice if she isn't wearing any. Hime then commands Suzu to slam her head into the lockers, so she keeps slamming her head into the locker door until she starts bleeding. Just then, Kazu joins them, and Hime accuses him of trying to feed his eyes, but Kazu tells her to stop, since he's uninterested in flat girls. Just as they're about to leave, Suzu says that someone might have stolen the chest huggers, and on hearing this, Hime threatens to flay whoever the culprit is. After this, some gym rats show up and ask Hime to join them for a workout, but she refuses. However, when they point out that the exercise could make her chesticles bigger, Hime changes her mind, while Kazu returns to the apartment to read a book. Shortly after, while Hime and Suzu work out with dumbbells at the gym, one of the gym bros comments that the workout will burn her chest fat and make her as muscular as he is. On hearing this, Hime angrily throws the dumbbells at them. Back at the apartment, Kazu finds Hime's missing treasure while reading and realizes that he must have mistaken it for a blanket the previous night. When he remembers how evil Hime can be, he freaks out. Later, Hime and Suzu return to the apartment, only to find her lacy wear scattered all over the place. So she wonders if a thief did it and decides to ask Kazu about it. Meanwhile, Kazu is in town, planning to hide Hime's melon slingers, where she'll never find it. Unfortunately, Yayoi sees him and rushes over to cuddle him. After exhausting Kazu, Yayoi asks if he's out to get books again, but when she checks his pockets, she finds Hime's chest of drawers and tells Kazu that stealing is a crime. When she suggests they talk to the police, Kazu suddenly snatches the underwear and bolts. At the same time, Hime checks the bookstore for Kazu, but Sakura says he's not there and tells Hime how popular Kazu has become in the neighborhood. In addition, Sakura states that holding Kazu feels so nice, making Hime imagine Kazu relaxing between Sakura's milky mountains, so she decides to increase his punishment. When she heads out of the bookstore, Hime suddenly feels like she's being watched, but when she looks around, she doesn't find anyone, so she takes her leave. Somewhere in the town, Kazu suddenly feels like Hime is after his life, so he quickly digs the ground to hide the chest hugger. Just then, he hears someone performing, so he peeks through some bushes. After listening to her monologue, he realizes she's performing from a book written by Momeji, another goat in the industry. Just then, Kazu sneezes and blows his cover, so Sachi freaks out when she realizes she's being watched. Suddenly, she decides to silence him forever. Immediately, Sachi converts her broom into a sharp weapon that freaks Kazu out. Shortly after, Sachi chases Kazu and tries to kill him, but he runs into traffic and almost gets crushed by a vehicle. Luckily, Hime shows up in time to rescue him, but Sachi catches up, so Hime draws her scissors to defend her pet. Sachi then commends Hime's weapon, but adds that it's nothing compared to hers. After an awkwardly intense stare down, Sachi tells Hime that she's lucky and states that they'll clash again soon. When Sachi leaves, Hime asks Kazu if he's hurt, but he says he's fine. However, Hime checks out his body and suddenly finds her underwear in his pocket. She then asks if he saw the dog design on the underwear, and when Kazu confirms that he did, he figures Hime has a thing for small dogs like him. Suddenly, Hime draws her scissors and threatens to terminate him, so Kazu runs away while Hime chases him. Sometime later, Hime and Kazu visit a hot spring inn where weapons of different kinds are displayed. While Kazu starts overthinking about what the weapons are for, Hime tells him to shut up and try to enjoy himself. But Kazu says he can't since he was taken there against his will. Just then, a pink-haired girl shows up to welcome them to the inn, and while Kazu wonders what she looks exactly like, the manager of Sumiya Hall, Hime, apologizes for bringing her dog. Not long after this, Kazu checks out a nearby bookshelf, and just when a book catches his eye, Madoka appears out of nowhere and picks Kazu up. Surprised, he asks what she's doing there, and Madoka thanks him for inviting her. In response, Hime says they'll become in-laws someday and suggests they get to know each other. After they settle in their room, Madoka spots a picture of Hime's family. Surprised, Kazu checks out the picture and thinks the girl in the picture looks like Smeagol. On hearing his thoughts, Hime says she's the girl in the picture and almost snips off his nose. So Kazu quickly says some nice things about her. Suddenly, Kazu notices from the picture that Hime is not as endowed as her mom and sister. But the moment he glances at Hime, he finds her fuming with bad energy as she explains that her sister took all the right genes and left her none. However, before Kazu can rearrange his thoughts, Hime uses her scissors on him. Afterwards, Madoka checks the room and finds one futon, so she asks if she should request another, but Hime says it's fine and goes mute like she's shy to say what she's thinking. Meanwhile, Kazu freaks out and imagines Hime trying to rub clams with Madoka, and when Hime realizes this, she pins him to the wall with her scissors. After this, Hime points out that she reserved another room for Madoka next door and tells her to go drop her luggage. However, when Madoka grabs Kazu, Hime tells her to drop him. In response, Madoka says she hasn't been with Kazu in a long time, but since Hime isn't ready to lose, things get heated up between the ladies as they threaten to destroy each other. While Kazu wonders how things escalated quickly, Hime suddenly suggests that they head to the hot springs, and Madoka happily agrees. Just then, Hime says they're off to the hot spring and commands Kazu not to peek, so Kazu checks back at the shelf but notices that the book he wants to read is gone. Moments later, Hime meets Sakura at the bath, and she reveals that she's there on an overnight trip with her school club. After this, she calls Hami, who's hiding behind a rock at the bath, to step out, but she says she's fine there and starts acting like a slave girl. Just then, Hime spots her full racks and suddenly feels disabled. While the ladies chatter about the inn, Hime wonders what Kazu is up to. Shortly after the return from the bath, grab Kazu and decide to go watch the sunset. However, when they arrive in a room, they find a group of masked masochists tied up and having fun. Suddenly, they hear Suzu's voice, so Hime takes off her mask, leaving her surprised. Suzu then asks Hime what she's doing there, and reveals that the masochists' order is having their yearly trip. After this, Hime angrily tells her to fall off the face of the planet, leaving Suzu excited and her comrades jealous. Unknown to Hime, a guy in a jacket and hat watches her through the window. The next day, Hime and Kazu take a stroll and run into Maxi and her men performing in public, so they ignore her and move on. Shortly after, they arrive at a store where they find Sachi, who then says she didn't think she'd run into them soon. In response, Hime asks if she wants a fight, but pauses when she spots the whetstone Sachi owns. Sachi then says it's one of the best for sharpening her blade and asks Hime if she owns one too. So Hime pretends she owns one, and in that moment, they feel like comrades. Suddenly, an alarm goes off on Sachi, and she says she has to leave. After she heads out, Hime says she has to get the whetstone too. When they return to the inn, Kazu points out that something is off since everyone seems to be staring at them. And when Hime notices it too, she says she's heading to the bath to sharpen her scissors and tells Kazu not to peek. Some moments later, at the bath, Hime sharpens her scissors while Suzu soaks in the hot spring to find ecstasy beyond her pain. Suddenly, Hime senses someone at the entrance and thinks it is Kazu. However, Maxi barges in, feeling like Beyonce, and when Hime asks what she's doing there, Maxi says it's an opportunity to see who's better between them. However, Hime ignored her and kept sharpening her scissors. Meanwhile, outside the bath, Kazu spots the staff armed with knives as they move towards the bath like zombies. So he rushes into the bath and jumps on Hime to inform her of the impending chaos. Quickly, Hime prepares to fight and says she didn't expect to find the attackers on her trip. She then reveals that it has happened once before, when she was attacked by a stalker, but she fought them all off with her scissors. Just then, Maxie gets out of the bath, desperate to steal the show as usual, but the zombies ignore her existence and attack Hime while Suzu enjoys being trampled upon by the zombies. Suddenly, Kazu charges towards them and knocks them all off while telling Hime to finish sharpening her scissors. When the attackers keep coming, Kazu tosses bowls at them, and when Hime sees this, she gets excited. Unknown to her, an attacker tries to strike from behind, but Madaka suddenly shows up with her chainsaw and knocks him down. Curious, Kazu asks how she got the chainsaw, and Madoka says she saw it collecting dust in the storage and loves it. After this, Madoka prepares to make heads roll with her chainsaw, but Hime suddenly jumps in with her fully sharpened scissors and fights alongside Madoka. During the fight, she notices that she dropped a book and it's not torn from people stepping on it, so she gets furious and goes on a rampage. Shortly after, when the staff recovers from their hypnosis, they apologize and say they don't remember anything. Kazu then asks Hime if someone is trying to take her life, but she says she doesn't care about that. Meanwhile, the stalker watches them from the shadows nearby. As they leave the inn, Kazu points out that their mini vacation was ruined, so Hime says they'll have to come back. On getting home, Kazu points out that the apartment has been ransacked, surprising Hime, who then says she sees no difference. Just then, Kazu points out that a book has been added to the library while they were away. Surprised, Hime asks how he could tell, and Kazu reminds her that it's her responsibility to keep a record of her books. Afterwards, Hime asks Kazu if he could identify the added book, and Kazu runs off to get it. Surprisingly, it's the same book Hime got at the store, so Kazu states that the stalker must have added the book while they're away. However, Hime says she's put up a security system ever since Madaka broke in and adds that the alarms would have gone off if there was an intruder. Afterwards, Hime sees Kazu reading the book and throws her scissors at him, but Kazu explains that the book is the only clue they have, so she decides to read it too. Some moments later, Hime finishes the book and thinks about how difficult it is to read, but then he pauses when he sees Hime reading and feels his heart thumping. While he wonders if he ate something weird, he tries to shake off the feeling, but when he can't, he leaps towards Hime. Moments later, Hime looks around for Kazu while he calls her with his head buried in the trash. Hime then asks if he's acting crazy because he's a dog, and Kazu responds by saying she threw him in there. Hime then says she must have done it on impulse, and adds that she couldn't have done it unprovoked. While Kazu tries to keep it secret that his heart was throbbing when he watched her read, Hime reads his mind and teases him while saying he'll get hurt if he falls for her. However, Kazu says she'll hurt him even if he doesn't, so Hime threatens to execute him if he doesn't fall in love with her, and Kazu screams, saying he'll fall in love. Shortly after, Kazu asks Hime about the book, and she says it was not bad. Suddenly, Kazu gets excited, and when Hime asks him why he's so lit, he says it's fun discussing a good read with her. On hearing this, Hime reminds him of their objective, and Kazu responds, saying he forgot about the stalker. Just then, Hime points out that the author of the book, Hotaru, is a pro writer who changed their writing style to look like an amateur. When Kazu chips in that the book is just like one of Kazu's books, she agrees with him. After this, they search for the author's name and find nothing, so Hime summons Suzu, who then lands in the apartment with a parachute. So Hime asks her to spill everything she knows about Hotaru, since she's quite famous in the editorial department for meddling. In response, Suzu says she knows Horu, but can tell them anything because she's an author for a different company. However, Hime threatens her with her scissors, so she decides to tell them everything they want to know. Later, while Suzu revels in the pain of Hime's torture, Hime and Lazu discuss their findings. Suzu has revealed that although they don't know her name, the author is still a student and also the daughter of a man named Shuzan, who is a legendary author. While they brainstorm on more clues, Suzu chips in that there were rumors that Hotaru used her father's influence to make her debut. Hearing this, Hime suggests they find Hotaru, but when Kazu says they don't have an appointment, Hime says they'll fix one when they get there. Afterwards, they arrive at the neighborhood, and while they start looking around, Kazu walks towards a closed bookstore, and when Hime tells him to stay on course, he apologizes, saying it's muscle memory. He then explains that he once bought one of her books from the store on a day he had exams. Hime then says he should have focused on his exams, but Kazu says her books are more important than the exams. Suddenly, Hime halts and asks him to repeat himself, but when he does, she says he means her books are important but not her. So she makes him howl, unaware they're being watched. Shortly after, Kazu takes Hime through a shortcut, and while he reminisces about old times, Hime suddenly stops and tells him they're surrounded. Just then, random people walk out of hiding like programmed robots, and Hime says it's just like the hot springs attack. Curious, Kazu asks if it's all Hotaru's doing, and Hime responds, saying they'll have to make it out alive to find out. Suddenly, she grabs Kazu and throws him at the enemies to spook them. When Kazu regains consciousness, Hime has dealt with all the attackers. While they try to figure out what to do next, the stalker steps out of the shadows and turns out to be Shuzan. So Hime asks if he's been watching her, and Shuzan says that her books are as wild as she fights. Some moments later, Hime ties Shuzan up and asks him why he's been attacking her, but Shuzan insinuates that she can't beat it out of him and asks her to put him down. When Hime refuses, Shuzan says she'll regret her action if she doesn't. Hime then asks him what will happen, and he says she might accidentally wet himself, since he's old and things are not working down there. Suddenly, Hime starts her interrogation with a kick and asks how he got into her apartment without triggering the alarm. Shuzan then reveals that he had the security company owner turn off her alarm and unlock the door, just to drop a copy of his daughter's work with her, as requested by his daughter. Curious, Hime asks why he kept it where she wouldn't find it, and Shuzan reveals that he wasn't cool with the idea because he doesn't want her to influence Hotaru any further. Just then, Shuzan expresses his full hatred for Hime and says it's why mobs attack her all the time. Hearing this, Hime cuts him down and says she finally understands Shuzan. She then states that Shuzan isn't responsible for the attack and adds that Hotaru must be responsible. However, Shuzan says she's wrong and tries to take the blame, but Hime doesn't buy this. So she asks Shuzan what Hotaru wants, and he reveals that she wants to meet her. Some days later, Hime and Kazu stand at the proposed address for the meeting, which turns out to be Kazu's school. So Hime asks Kazu what class he was in, and when he responds, she suggests they start their search there. Curious, Kazu asks if she's trying to relive her school days memories because she's been out of school for so long. In response, Hime says that her uniform still fits if she wears it, when Kazu states that it's because her chest area has been underserved for years. Hime deals with him and walks away while suggesting they split up. Just then, Kazu heads to the library and takes down some books and is surprised to find some documents still there. Just then, Hami shows up and says he must be Kazu, surprising him to see her there. At that moment, Kazu wonders what she's doing at the school and figures she must be Hotaru and the culprit behind all the attacks. Sometime before all this, Kazu found a novel manuscript at the library and read everything while trying to check who wrote it. Just then, he heard someone crying and looked around, only to find Hami crying under the table because of her manuscript. So he pushed the manuscript over to her, and when she took it, she raced to the door. However, Kazu stopped her and asked if she really wrote the manuscript. When she confirmed that she did, Kazu begged her to write the rest. Some days later, Kazu found the rest of the manuscript, but Hami was nowhere to be found. Knowing she's hiding somewhere, he threatened to read out the script, so Hami entered the room and said she'd drop dead if he did. However, Kazu told her it's a joke and said he has finished reading the manuscript. She then started panicking, so he tried to get her calm and wondered why she was so negative. After this, Kazu asked if she was a fan of Shinobu's work and stated that her work was an inferior version of Shinobu's. Suddenly, Hami tried to unalive herself, but Kazu stopped her and said the novel is interesting. However, he added that she hasn't properly finished the novel. Curious, Hami asked why he thought so, and Kazu said that no one who looks up to Shinobu would be satisfied with her work. He then encourages her to finish her writing. Sometime later, he suggested that she submit her manuscript for a contest, since it's the first step to going pro. However, Hami refuses, saying that it'll be a waste of the judge's time and adding that she could never become an author. Kazu then tells her that there are people like him waiting to read her books. On hearing this, Hami agrees to become an author and promises to make him her first reader when she publishes. Back in real time, Hami explains to Kazu that her pen name is an anagram of his name, and Kazu wonders how she knew it was him. When he wonders if she can hear his thoughts too, Hami says she can tell he's saying something, but she doesn't understand him. After this, she apologizes for disappointing him and adds that she feels so pathetic she might wet herself. While she keeps talking down on herself, Kazu tries to change her mind, but she can't understand him. After this, Hami reveals she knows it's him because Sakura told her about a dog that buys books every day. She then adds that she didn't believe it until he showed up to get the manuscript. She then blames him for dying before getting to read her and states that she kept her promise by becoming an author. Afterwards, Hami says she's been unable to write the rest of the manuscript since he died and still can't when he's back. She then says it's because she's a fake author and states that she has to defeat the real author inside her and surpass. Hearing this, Kazu figures it must be why she attacked Hime. Meanwhile, at Kazu's former class, Hime checks out his pictures, and Hami announces on a public address system that she has her dog. She then tells Hime to head to the roof to get him back. On getting to the roof, Hime gets furious and accuses Kazu of switching sides, but when Kazu says he didn't, Hime draws her scissors. Hami then says she won't let her hurt Kazu and states that she initially thought it would be difficult to get hold of her, since her chest is flat, unlike her books. Suddenly, Hime gets angry and puts her scissors to Hami's neck, but Hami suggests they thrash it out with their pens instead. The writing contest is an ancient contest used to resolve disagreements between authors to avoid violence. So they sit at the library, and Hami explains that the first author to write a short story on 100 manuscript pages wins. In response, Hime tells her to bring on everything she's got and orders Kazu to call the start of the contest. Immediately, Kazu barks. Both ladies go to war with their pens and pages. When Hime starts taking the lead, Hami activates a special writing technique that enables her to write with both hands. However, her other hand soon stops working, since she can't use the skill for long. Suddenly, Hami activates another skill that makes Hime drowsy, but Hime suddenly draws her scissors and stabs herself to stay awake. After this, Hami keeps using other abilities till she runs out of tricks and starts sobbing. So Hami asks Hime if she read her book, and Hime responds, saying she did. However, Hime comments that it's not bad and asks Hami if she's satisfied. In response, Hami says she is and clicks a button. Suddenly, the bookshelves flip, surrounding them with mirrors, and Hime loses control of her hands, so she struggles to prevent her hand from stabbing herself. Meanwhile, Hami continues writing while explaining that it's a writing technique called Bryanak, where she scattered several keywords throughout her book that leave a message in the subconscious of the reader, instructing them to eliminate a red-eyed girl with scissors. Hearing this, Kazu realizes it must be why he jumped on Hime, and also why the mobs attack her. So, Hami reveals that the suggestion doesn't work on everyone, so it was a gamble for her. While Hime struggles on the floor, she suddenly grabs the pen with her teeth and resumes writing. Shortly after, Kazu announces Hime as the winner, and Hami tries to end her life, but Kazu quickly stops her while she apologizes for not being good enough. Afterwards, Hime brings over her manuscript and starts barking, but when Hami says she can't understand him, Hime reveals that Kazu is telling her to write. In addition, she reveals that Shuzan didn't use his influence to help her make her debut, surprising Hami. However, when Hami keeps putting herself down, Hime explains that anyone can become an author if they have a desire to write and have readers to read their work. So, Hami faces Kazu and asks if he'd like to read her work someday, and he responds with a positive bark. Afterwards, Hime asks Hami to let her read her manuscript too when she finishes it, but Hami reminds her that she has caused a lot of trouble. So, Hime offers to punish Kazu for her sins and encourages her to write, making Hami tear up. Some days later, when Hami visits the apartment, Kazu reads a book and suddenly loses control of his paw. So, Hime notifies Hame that she tried the Bryanak on Kazu and it worked, so Hame asks if she thinks it's a good idea. In response, Hime says that Kazu won't make a move if she doesn't do that, so she starts controlling him while he screams out his lungs. Later, at Hime's apartment, Madoka announces that she's done with her exams and offers to make some curry to thank them for letting her stay, but Kazu tells her to count him out. Madoka then asks Hime if she can use her kitchen, and Hime to stop acting like a stranger. Suddenly, Madoka gets fired up and promises to make the curry with everything she's got. She then summons her chainsaw and goes crazy with it in the kitchen. While Kazu checks out the chaos going on in the kitchen, Hime joins him and says whatever Madoka cooks will be amazing, but Kazu doubts this. When he perceives the aroma and realizes that Madoka must have gotten better, he decides to enjoy her meal. Excited, Kazu climbs up a ladder to see what wonder she's cooking, but is shocked to see her stirring a blue potion. Amused, Hime reminds him of his decision to enjoy his sister's masterpiece. To escape eating Madoka's meal, Hime visits the bookstore, but runs into Yayoi, who then makes his life miserable. While Sakura tells Yayoi to go easy on him, Kazu wonders if he's being a good brother by running away. Suddenly, the Afro guy gets excited when he finds a book he's always wanted, and Sakura says she got it just because of him. Shortly after, Suzu shows up looking like she's been hit by a train and commends Hime for working her up pretty good. Just then, Sakura informs her that the books she requested are finally available. After Suzu wobbles out of the store, Kazu feels happy she didn't see him and wonders how Sakura handles her variety of customers. He then examines the books on the shelves and realizes that their selections are expanding. Just then, one of Maxi's guards walks in and says he'd like to buy all the books of Shibobu and Momeiji, another best-selling author. Sakura then says she'll have the books delivered, but the guard insists on leaving with them. Suddenly, the shop gets flooded by men in suits, and after they all leave, Kazu wonders why they bought out all the books from two of the best-selling authors. While trying to locate the men in suits, Kazu ends up at the park and sees Sachi performing again, so he tries to leave quietly, but steps on a twig. Suddenly, Sachi turns red and unsheathes her blade to attack him. Somehow, Kazu evades the attacks, and when she commends his coordinated movements, Kazu says he's had practice being chased around by a flat-chested, scissor-wielding girl. Just then, she tries to eliminate him with her blade, but Hime suddenly shows up out of nowhere and blocks the attack with her scissors, surprising Sachi. Excited, Kazu says he'll take his punishment later but tells her to get rid of Sachi first. Suddenly, they start clashing weapons, and Sachi brags about her experience in battle and introduces herself. Suddenly, Maxie arrives on the scene with a helicopter and calls Hime by her pen name while announcing that it's finally time to settle their beef. Surprised, Sachi asks if she's really Shinobu, and Maxie says she feels insulted when Hime's books are put alongside hers as bestsellers. She then announces that she has bought up all of Hime's books, including those from Emoji. Unfazed, Hime thanks her for the purchase, so Maxie shows her a covered structure nearby. She then commands her men to unveil it, and it turns out to be a 9-story tower. Suddenly, Maxie lands on the tower and challenges him to a 9-story contest where each participant writes 9 short stories, which will be evaluated by 9 judges. After Maxie reveals that she's chosen the judges, Hime says she didn't see it coming. Suddenly, Sachi charges towards Maxie on the tower, but her men quickly line up to protect her. Despite this, Sachi makes it rain shirtless men with a few swings of her blade. Just then, she lands on the tower, and while Maxie threatens to make her pay, Sachi says the greatest author in the world is her mistress. When she reveals that Momeiji is her mistress, Maxie says she can easily take both of them on. Afterwards, Maxie and Himel take their positions at their seat and fire up for the challenge. Unfortunately, Maxie's guard picks her up and takes her into a helicopter while saying he promised to get her back in time for work. Just then, Sachi announces that she needs to finish her shopping and return to Momeiji. So Hime tells Kazu that she's leaving him disappointed since they've raised his expectations. Meanwhile, Momeiji observes all this happening from a distance. Sometime later, Kazu visits the bookstore with Hime, and shortly after, Hami walks in too and recognizes him immediately. Just then, Sakura asks what she wants, and she announces that she'll become an author. Surprised, Sakura reminds her that she's already an author, but Hami says she's thinking of starting fresh. In response, Sakura says she doesn't understand, so Hami threatens to unalive herself, while Sakura tells her not to. She then complains about being unable to communicate what she has in mind. Hime then chips in that she made an important decision. Shortly after, Madoka joins them in the store and announces that she passed her entrance exam. So Sakura asks if she'll be living all by herself, but Madoka reveals that she's only allowed to live in a dorm because her parents don't want her studying in Tokyo after what happened to Kazu. She then tells everyone that she thought there was no need to force herself to forget about Kazu, so she decided to move to where he is instead and live her life to the fullest for him. Hearing this, Sakura offers to support Madoka and Hami, while Kazu marvels at how much the girls have grown. Just then, Hime asks Kazu what he'll do about the blue curry, and he says he'd be happy to eat it because he's seen his sister grow. So when he gets home, Madoka serves the curry, which now has many colors and frogs jumping in it. Hime then leaves, saying she has a deadline to meet while Madoka force feeds Kazu. The next day, Suzu shows up at the apartment, but Hime ignores her and continues writing. When she finally realizes she's being ignored, she gets excited, saying it's just the right kind of toxicity she loves. Meanwhile, Kazu observes Hime's hand movements and senses her telling him in Morse code to ignore Suzu. However, when Suzu asks Kazu if he's ignoring her, too, he calls her a woman of culture. Suzu then reminds him that she has a name, surprising Kazu since she's never been that reasonable. Unfortunately, Suzu requests that he call her a pig instead. Afterwards, he asks Suzu why she showed up, and she says she wanted to talk to Hime about future plans. She then points out that it's about time for Hime to make herself known publicly. So Kazu asks why she hides her identity, and Suzu explains that she was young when she debuted, and publications from a young author shape the view of the readers differently. After this, Suzu says it's time to reveal her identity since she has produced undeniable results. In addition, she points out that Hime needs to try other things, like talking to an author with a slightly different style, appearing in the media, and putting herself out. On hearing this, Kazu points out that Hime trusts, and Suzu responds, saying she came prepared. After discussing different outfit ideas for Hime's public presentation, Suzu invokes the god of masochism and activates an editor technique known as Sudden Cyclone. Using the technique, Suzu dresses Hime up in a yukata, surprising Kazu. Just then, she tries out other outfits on her while creating narratives to match her look. Just when Suzu suggests they move to the main thing, Madoka shows up with a volcano on a plate, announcing that the curry is ready. While Suzu and Kazu marvel at the dish, Madoka asks Kazu if he'd like to see her in any of the outfits, and despite telling her not to bother, Madoka tries on a gladiator outfit and says she's having fun. Moments later, Hami shows up and apologizes for visiting unannounced, and when Suzu asks what she needs, Hami says she wants to talk to Hime about something. However, since she's busy, Hami says she'll take her own life and spots a white outfit perfect for the afterlife. Moments later, after Madoka and Suzu leave for the bookstore, Suzu announces that the main outfit she planned for Hime is a swimsuit, surprising Kazu. Suddenly, Hime grabs Suzu's head and asks what she's doing while she was writing. Suzu then explains that she was trying to improve her image for a book signing event. Suddenly, she whips out her scissors and carves her signature on Suzu's shirt, making her scream in excitement. Afterwards, Suzu announces that her plan B is to get Hime drunk, and when Kazu asks why, she explains that alcohol changes people, so the harsh Hime might become kind when drunk. Suddenly, she reactivates her ability and fills Hime's cup with alcohol within a second. Afterwards, Hime drinks up while Kazu freaks out and expects the world to end when Hime goes crazy. However, Hime simply gets up and picks him off the floor and becomes super nice to him. Surprised, Kazu asks if she is really the one making Hime wonder if he forgot about her. When Suzu joins them, asking to be cut all over, Hime says it's a cruel thing to do, annoying Suzu. So she makes Hime drink more to get her violent, but even after drinking, Hime gets more jovial and tells Suzu she loves her. On hearing this, Suzu's soul leaves her body, so Hime covers her up and holds Kazu closely. Just then, Kazu comments on her bony chest pressing against him, and while he expects to get stabbed, nothing happens. So he comments on Hime's bony chest again and gets emotional while asking Hime if he prefers larger melons. To make her feel better, Kazu says the size doesn't matter. Excited, Hime asks if he's proposing to her, making Kazu freak out while she imagines getting married in grand style. After this, he starts imagining their honeymoon in Hawaii, with their friends playing on a beach and her gym buddies doing their thing. When Hime starts imagining them in their new home, planning about building a family, Kazu screams for her to snap out of it. Afterwards, she suggests they sleep together and takes Kazu into the bedroom, where she pins him to the bed to show him some skills, but ends up throwing up over him. Later, when Hime is sober, she tells Kazu that he reeks, and he blames her for it. When she tells him to leave the house for a month, Kazu thinks his life would be better if he lived with a beautiful and nice version of Hime. So Hime picks him up and decides to bath him, and will always be kind to him. If you made it to the end of this video, confuse the fake fans by commenting, "Suzu is insane." And if you want more videos like this, like and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching.